Hey, everybody. My name is Juanita Charles. I am the founder and executive director of Manifest Magic Black Girl Cooperative. We are really, really excited to be participating in Black Maternal Health Week this year. And we have been really intentional about pulling in some subject matter experts to help really just delve into the topics that are really important and really explain the historical context of how we got here and where we are today. So we are here today with Dr. D. And she's really just going to explain to us the signs and symptoms of postpartum depression, other parts of, other things that affect the mental health of birthing people throughout their journey. And so first I'll throw to you and let you introduce yourself and we'll hop right into it.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Leslie Davis, and you can call me Dr. D if you like. I am a relationship therapist located in the St. Louis region. So I'm right on the border of Illinois, Missouri. So I'm licensed in both states. I'm also a national certified counselor, and I am the podcast host of She Matters, which is a podcast that I created out of my dissertation work that supports the mental health struggles of Black single moms.
That is awesome. So quick fangirl moment. I listened to her podcast before I even realized it was her when we connected. So it's really exciting. So, okay. So we'll just hop right into it, I guess. So when we talk about pregnant and I guess we'll say birthing people, a lot of times we say Black mamas, but we also want to ensure that people understand that we're talking about everyone on the diaspora. So I don't care if you're like Afro-Latino, if you are, whatever that is, right? If you can give birth, this is who we're pertaining to. So hopping right into it. So we want to kind of focus, like you said, on the mental health and the postpartum depression. So I guess for those that don't know, like what is postpartum depression?
Yeah, postpartum depression is what happens after baby blues, if baby blues is pertaining to you. So there is a clear difference when it comes to baby blues versus postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. So baby blues is something typical that you might experience. You know, you have your baby, you're at home, and maybe it's your first baby and you're crying, you can't stop crying. You might be sad and you don't understand why you're feeling that way. And typically the baby blues will set in within 2 to 3 days after having your baby. And it kind of comes out of nowhere, but people will talk about, especially older generation will say it's normal, you'll get over it. And with baby blues, that is true. You will get over it. So if the symptoms of baby blues is lasting longer than 2 weeks, then we're entering that phase of postpartum depression. And so some of those symptoms with postpartum depression are a little more severe. So you might notice a change in your appetite. Maybe you're eating more than you used to, or you don't have appetite at all. You might also notice symptoms that are changing with your sleep patterns. And of course, having a baby, you're going to be tired. That's normal, right? But if you are not sleeping at all and you're wide awake 24/7, and you know that that's not your normal, and you know it's not because the baby's keeping you up, that is one symptom you want to keep in check and make sure that you're talking to your friends and family about. I would also say if you notice a drastic change in your mood, maybe you're more irritable than you usually are, and there's no real reason for your irritability. You're just, popping off unexpectedly, and people are like, what's wrong with you? And you don't know, you might not know what's wrong. And that is part of the postpartum depression signs.
Oh, okay. And then you also mentioned postpartum anxiety. So how does that differ from the baby blues and postpartum depression?
Yeah. So with postpartum anxiety, maybe you're experiencing some anxiety related to holding your baby. Maybe you're afraid of hurting the baby. So you don't want to change a baby's diaper. You're afraid to hold them and rock them to sleep. And you kind of pass that responsibility off to someone else because you're just afraid. You're too scared to, maybe you're hearing their cry. So you're up and you think you hear the baby crying, baby's not crying at all.
Oh,
Those are some of
okay.
those symptoms of anxiety.
Oh, wow. Okay. And so I've spoken to a lot of people who said, they had experienced postpartum depression and realized it until I guess afterwards. And I was like, man, I should have really gotten some help or whatever. So I know we had talked a little bit about understanding knowing the signs and symptoms of depression. Okay, so we had talked about postpartum depression, baby blues, and postpartum anxiety. So I see here that you have presented symptoms that are specifically pertaining to depression in Black women.
Yeah, so there are some new studies that are starting to come out, which is awesome because Black women are not always included in mental health research. And so there's new information that has come out where I like to share that with Black women, but other women who support Black women. So there are specific symptoms that we might experience as Black women when it comes to depression, which might include that fatigue. So I had mentioned before, like you might not be sleeping well, you might be just tired. And that's normal when you have a baby, of course, because your body is adjusting, your hormone levels are changing again. But that extreme fatigue where you just can't do anything or you have no motivation to do anything, that is one of those symptoms. Of course, the difficulty sleeping, I mentioned being irritable, and you might say things like, I'm just angry all the time, or I don't feel like talking to anyone. And that is just another way, that's code for I'm depressed. You may not have the words or the language to say I'm feeling depressed or I'm experiencing depression, but maybe you are telling yourself, I'm mad all the time. I don't want to talk to anybody. I want to be by myself. That isolation piece is key. Maybe you're blaming yourself, like, I can't do anything right. This baby keeps crying and I don't know how to stop it. That's one of those symptoms to look out for. Also, criticizing yourself. I'm a bad mom. Maybe criticizing yourself for having multiple children. You didn't plan on doing that. And then the last one is just the inability to experience pleasure. So nothing is making you happy. You're just not satisfied. Maybe people are trying to bring you your favorite foods and you just don't want it, or people are trying to engage you in activities that you typically enjoy and you have no interest in doing that. And so instead of recognizing that as, I just don't want to hang out with people, that's really depression. And so that's something that we deserve to talk about more.
Oh, wow. I think some of those things we do take as that is normal. And I also understand that
Absolutely.
there are, I guess, cultural factors at play that, we tend to take on a lot. And I think that self-blame and self-criticism a lot of times just kind of comes with it. And so you don't recognize that you are experiencing real symptoms that say you may need a little bit of help with your mental health.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
So as we talk more about some of the symptoms, you said baby blues, postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety. So I had also heard about something called postpartum psychosis. Can you give us some information about that?
Yeah, postpartum psychosis is somewhat rare. And so, one thing I want to put out there is like a disclaimer. So, postpartum psychosis and anxiety, you might be having some really dark thoughts,
Mhm.
and you might be afraid of yourself because of these thoughts. And one thing to keep in mind is that we can have a thought, but the difference is when we act on that thought. So
Yes.
that postpartum psychosis will kick in, and it can happen at any point. So I want you to remember the perinatal period is from birth up to about 12 months. And sometimes people include up to age 2 of your child,
Mhm.
right? Even if the child doesn't live that long. So keep that in mind as well. That postpartum psychosis, you might hear stories of women who drive off and they drown their babies, or they drive off and they want to jump off a bridge. They're doing things that are not normal,
Yeah.
that people will see as like, girl, you're crazy. What's wrong
Yeah.
with you?
Yeah.
Right. Or doing things that are very irrational and it makes no sense to anyone else. It doesn't even make sense to them. But
Mhm.
that mom who's experiencing postpartum psychosis, they may not even be aware of what they're doing.
Mm. So that is one of those things where maybe you hear voices, or maybe is that type of thing too, like hallucinations and think does
Yeah,
that
definitely the hallucinations. And that again, that comes in with not sleeping well, not getting
Yeah.
enough rest, not eating properly. So your body, again, your body is changing, your hormones are getting back into place. And if you're combining that with maybe you have a child who has special needs or a child that's in the hospital and you're not able to rest because you're worried about your baby,
Yeah.
all of these risk factors come together and that can trigger postpartum psychosis.
Oh my goodness. Okay. And I think that's something that we don't really hear a lot about. You see it on the news, but nobody thinks like, hey, there's a lead up to that. It doesn't just
Absolutely.
happen. One of the things I know you are really good about addressing the needs and concerns and really just the ways to help like single mothers. So could you really touch on how the mental health of single mothers maybe they have a unique set of circumstances or things that they experience based on being single mothers?
Yeah. So with postpartum depression, that can be triggered by some stressful events. And if you think about the experience of a single mom, maybe this is her first baby and the child's father left her. That
Yeah.
is a stressful event. Or
Yeah.
maybe this is her third or fourth baby and she's a single mom with another father involved. And
Yeah.
maybe her friends and family are judging her. And
Yeah.
so she might tend to isolate herself, or her family is isolating her. They don't want to have anything to do with her. And they keep telling her, I don't want to support you anymore. You keep doing this to yourself. You keep putting yourself in this position. You
Yeah.
got to deal with it. And so
Yeah.
she has that new baby and she comes home by herself. She is
Yeah.
at risk because she's not getting the help and support she needs. It typically would be there with another family member or the child's father. She's not able to get any sleep. She's probably not able to eat properly. She might have this baby that's crying all the time. Maybe she's back and forth to the hospital.
Yeah.
And think about the struggle of doing all that on her own,
Yeah.
no support at all.
Yeah.
And y'all know, if you're a mom, you know how important it is to rest.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? She's not able to rest. She has to do everything. She has to keep the house clean. She has to pay the bills. And if she's, just having a baby, there are moms who have to go back to work early
Yeah.
because they don't have health insurance. Or if they don't work at a job long enough, then they don't have FMLA. They don't qualify for that. So they have to go back early.
Yeah.
They may be in a position where they work an hourly job. They don't
Yeah.
have salary. So if they don't work, they don't make any money. They've
Yeah.
got all the kids to feed. They need diapers. They need milk. There's
Yeah.
been a milk shortage, right? A formula
Yeah.
shortage. And
Dang.
so they're in a position where they're struggling and they're afraid. And so
Yeah.
all of those risk factors come into play, where that is another risk factor to that postpartum depression.
Mm. And so that, yeah, because I guess they're just in a more vulnerable position. Yeah, that's unfortunate. And I will say I do think a lot of people you don't think about the pressures when it's just whether you have your mom there or whatever, sometimes people just don't have that. So and so as we're looking, I guess, a little more deeply into it, I guess, a subject that I think a lot of people kind of shy away from is suicide or unaliving yourself, or however we want to, the way that people feel comfortable discussing it. It's one of those things that's really important to discuss. So I just kind of want to just have you share your thoughts on that.
Okay. There's a slide that I want to share for that part. Yeah. So there is a hot topic that I love to address because we have been suffering in silence for too long. And when I say we, I mean Black women, but specifically Black single moms. We suffer in silence. And there are so many women who struggle with thoughts of harming themselves or killing themselves or even killing their babies. And they're not talking to anyone about that. And there are friends and family and people in their lives that care so much about them that don't know how to ask about it. And they're afraid to say something with the thought that if I ask them, that's going to trigger them to do it. And
Right.
so for anyone who believes that, I will tell you that is not true. It is more than appropriate to ask someone if they are wanting to harm themselves, if they're wanting to kill themselves. And so
Right.
just some simple questions I have here is, you can just ask her, have you had thoughts about harming yourself? Or have you had thoughts about dying? So it doesn't always have to be direct about, do you want to kill yourself? There's
Right.
another way to ask that question. You can ask her, have you ever tried to harm yourself? Maybe she's tried it in the past, she never told you. Or
Right.
are you afraid of dying? So if there's an expression of fear of dying, that might be something that could save her life if you're able to talk to her about it.
Oh,
And
perfect.
then specifically asking, have you made any plans to hurt yourself or to hurt your baby? So she
Mm.
may not say, yes, I'm going to kill myself right now, but maybe she's had some dark thoughts for a while. You don't know how long. She
Right.
never told anyone. She's making plans. So if it gets to that point of, I'm not just thinking about, I want to die, but now I've made a plan to make that happen, you
Mm.
want to step in immediately and get her help, whether that's calling 911, whether that's taking her to the hospital or calling a mental health professional right away. There is also the suicide lifeline. It used to be this long number. Now it's just, 988. Simple as
Right.
that. And you can call that as that support person to say, I have a friend who's in need and I don't know how to help them right now. What do I do? That lifeline is available 24/7.
Oh my gosh. That's one of those things that people don't hit on. And like you said, people don't really know how to ask. It's like, girl, how you doing? Like we kind of say those types of things and then hope
Yeah.
people just spill their guts. And that maybe that's just
Absolutely. We want to let it pass. Like, please don't tell me you want to do anything bad because I don't know how to handle that. Right.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So as we're talking about kind of the questions I asked when we talk about suicide, what are some questions maybe to ask if we are trying to ascertain if they are depressed or really dealing with the high anxiety?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, to check in with a mom who might be feeling depressed, you can just ask her directly, are you feeling depressed?
Right.
Right? Are
Yeah.
you sad? Take note of any changes in her behavior. If she's not as lively as she usually is, or if you notice she's not talking, she's not answering the phone.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So that isolation piece that you talked about.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. Or if you come over and you say, I'm gonna bring you some food, and she's like, just leave it at the door.
yeah,
So she's checking out and she's not welcoming people into her space. And especially if it's like your best friend, why would she not want you there?
yeah.
That's a
Absolutely.
sign something's going on, and you need to lean into that. We're
Absolutely.
we're so quick to just say, "Oh, I'm gonna give you your space," but at this time, during that perinatal period, space is not always what she needs. And
Right.
the help that you can give her is just show up.
Oh, yeah, that's
Just show
perfect.
up. You don't have to have conversation. You can bring her food. You can say, "Hey, I'm going to come over and I'm going to let you sleep for a little bit. We don't have to talk. I'll
Yeah,
come over and I'll hold the baby for you so you can go rest, or you can go clean, or you can go out and take a walk if you want to." You
yeah.
know, give her some space in that way, but that way that gives you a chance to put your eyes on her to see how she's really doing.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So if we all kind of have that friend sometimes that's very much like, I love you, but get out of my business. Like, so this so this kind of gives you the opportunity to see it up front and then address it when you see it.
There's a stigma in the Black community about mental health. And I
Yes.
think that has changed just a little bit since the pandemic, because we've been exposed to more Black therapists out there, right? Black therapists on the rise, thank God. So we have therapists who look like us. So Black women are more willing to seek therapy because there's someone that looks like them, right? But I think as far as the depression that we experience and the postpartum depression, it is triggered and we're not getting the help because we're not qualifying for a diagnosis. So
Mm,
if you think about a Black mom who goes in and sees her doctor for that 6-week checkup,
yeah.
she might be given what's called the EPDS, and that's looking for symptoms of depression and suicidal thoughts. And
Yeah.
so she's not honest on that assessment, then her score might be very low, or she doesn't qualify for a referral to get mental health treatment. Or if she's seeing a therapist and she's doing that intake session and they're asking her questions about, her symptoms and what are you experiencing, and she's not telling the truth about what she's going through, she's not going to qualify for a diagnosis, and then she's not going to qualify for mental health treatment. And so there's reasons why we're not honest,
Yeah.
right? If you think about the rate of Black children in foster care, so
Yeah.
especially for single moms, this is key. There are women who will not be honest about their thoughts about harming themselves or feeling sad or feeling depressed or feeling anxious, especially if they're seeing a professional who does not look like them. They're not going to be honest about that because there's a fear tied to, if I tell you my truth, you're going to hotline me and I'm
Yeah.
going to lose my kid.
Yeah.
So if we
Absolutely.
don't speak up and be honest, we're not going to get help. But at the same time, we're probably not going to ask for help if we don't see people that look like us to get that help from.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And so that is why seeing someone who is at least culturally competent is a really big deal. Okay, I actually want to touch on this story because I saw it on social media and it was the strangest thing.
Mm.
So when you're talking about people that look like us and people who are culturally competent, which are usually just people that look like us, right? They're very aware of like the way we speak, our colloquialisms. Because I do this thing all the time. I'll say, well, don't get me to line. Did not realize that many of my colleagues like really didn't understand what I was talking about. And so they're like, well, why would she start lying? So that's the whole thing. Or really just some of the things. So the story was that there was this Black mom, she had just had the baby and she was tapping her head.
Mm.
And then, did you see that? And then
No.
yeah, and the nurse, it was a Caucasian nurse, and she kept coming in and she was like, so I guess she got to talking to another nurse. She was like, yeah, I need to do a referral for her. We need to like figure out whatever, because like she's harming herself. And she's
Mm.
like harming herself. And she had to explain to her, it's like her hair is itching, like her head is itching, and this is how we scratch our head when you have your hair done because you don't want to mess it up. That could have easily been a terrible experience for her, whether her baby was taken, whether they, you know what I mean? And so that's why cultural competence is very important. And so exactly what you're saying. But again, we do have to be honest, but there's Black people just don't have a really good relationship with the medical community. And I mean, and rightfully so. There's definitely a
Yeah,
fear.
there's the historical mistreatment we've experienced. And I've worked in the hospital setting as a therapist in the Heart Center at Children's Hospital in St. Louis. And my team, I worked on a perinatal behavioral health team. And so
Yeah.
some of my colleagues share stories about just the documentation piece. Like there are therapists who are not culturally competent, even though they've taken a class
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
they're not, taking the information in and really holding on to that, where they may document inappropriately what they see in a Black woman's behavior or her language.
Yeah.
And that becomes cause, like you mentioned before, it's cause for, oh, she needs another referral, or we need to give her medication.
Mhm.
And Black women, we're afraid of medication because that means we're crazy.
Yeah.
Not,
Absolutely. Yeah.
there's that stigma associated with medication as well.
So yeah, like you said, there is this stigma. So I remember a person in my family when they were going to therapy. I was younger. I really didn't think anything of it because nobody really said anything. But as I get older, I'm kind of relaying back to this person, and I'm just like, so okay, because I'm dealing with my own things. Okay, well, I'm preparing to go to therapy because I think I need that, and just being honest with myself. And so, I'm speaking to her, and she's like, "Oh, I lied." Girl, what? So I was like, okay, this is not helpful at all. So because I'm thinking, okay, you got some coping mechanisms, you've got some like help me. And it's a lot of, well, like I'm not telling those people my business.
Hmm.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I did not take that route. Like I was too they were like, okay, you got to scale it back a little bit. Like, can we start from the beginning? So I know we had talked about the way that there's this stigma in our families, right? In the Black community against mental health, or about getting mental health help because you'll be called crazy and all of those different things. And so we can see how it translates into like from mother to mother. So do you want to talk about like how that kind of affects the next generation of mothers, I guess?
Yeah, and that's actually a risk factor to postpartum depression, is a history of mental health issues, right? And so a lot of times when a woman is the first, or she thinks she's the first in her family to get therapy,
Yeah.
she will share her experience, and she might tell her mom, like, "Mom, I'm going to therapy." And she might be asked, "Well, why are you doing that?" "Oh, because I've been feeling sad and depressed." And, "Oh, girl, that's normal. I went through that too." And so
Yes.
what we don't know is that without having that conversation, we don't recognize that our mothers may have been depressed too. They just didn't have the language to say, "I was depressed." They didn't have the language to say, "I went through postpartum depression." But they had the exact same symptoms. And maybe they were told by their mothers, "It's going to pass. That's normal. Just get over it. Do what you got to do. Take care of yourself. Take care of the baby. It's not about you no more."
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
And I've definitely heard that. Even if not from my family, like I've heard other women say, "Oh, well, we just get through it." Okay, well, I mean,
That's
I
that
hear
strong
you.
Black woman identity, which is
Yeah,
a blessing and a curse at the same time. Like, yes, it does keep us strong and it keeps us motivated. Time, it causes us to suffer in silence because we're
yeah,
just told, like, just get through it, get over it.
yeah,
Don't worry about how you feel. You got to keep moving.
yeah.
But because we're told to be strong, we don't ask for help.
Absolutely. And then that is the point where we suffer, our kids suffer, and then because of that, generations behind us suffer. So that's that kind of like generational curse, right? That I think those are the things that people refer to when we talk about those different things. I guess maybe there's a thing that says if the people before you are really comfortable talking about their experiences, then it of course you get to learn from those, and then you get to teach those behind you. So it really just
It's the
alleviates.
power of our stories, the power of our voice
Yeah,
in telling our story and telling, yes, I'm going through this, I'm going through that. And when you share that with one mom,
yeah,
"Girl, I went through the same thing too." Really? Like, there's a connection that's built there. And when we
absolutely.
talk about suicide, there's a theory of suicide that's called the interpersonal theory of suicide, where people are actually driven to commit the act of ending their life in that way because they feel disconnected. And a lot of times we feel disconnected because we're not telling our stories. We're not sharing our truth with anyone.
Absolutely, man. And I think that's one thing that, well, I think I had not considered, and maybe people who are viewing, but like the isolation, just feeling like you're alone, or you're the only one, or maybe you're not up to par because you're expressing things differently or experience what you feel like is experiencing things differently, and that'll really put you in those spaces. So I'm sorry, because I'll stop and I'll reflect because I am learning. Like as we're having this conversation, this is not like, oh, I know it and we're just doing it for sure. Like I'm learning. So it's just like, huh, you go look back over things and like,
Mhm.
huh, I can see that. Uh-huh. So that's just kind of where I am. Yeah, I remember my mom, she was like, yeah, but it's just what you do. Oh, no, it's just how you feel. Now, my mom's had 5 kids, so girl, after everyone, this is what I'm
Right.
like,
Who
and
would
it,
want to go through that 5 times, right?
yeah, and I'm
You
just
will be
like, girl,
sad every time.
yeah. And literally,
No.
it going to therapy. Well, I lied, girl. Okay, well, you need all the help. Now, I will say the good thing is it didn't show in her parenting. Like you would see, how like a lot of parents they get up on Saturdays and there's like, oh, you play the music, okay, you're gonna come, you're clean, like what that is.
Yeah.
Mom didn't do that. Like she would wake up in the morning and she starts like yelling, and I'm getting tired of this. So y'all going,
That's the irritability piece.
yeah. And I'm just like, now wait a minute. Like I was tired of what? I have not even opened an eye yet. Like
Uh-huh.
but like you said, it's one of those things that, and it's almost truly it became normalized in our house. And so it was never, you never even took it as she was mad. It's just like, oh, here she go again,
Mhm.
and not even realizing like what may drive somebody to be that way. I really just want to say thank you. I think all of this information has been really invaluable. If there's anything maybe I didn't touch on that maybe you want to mention now, maybe we can hit that now.
Yeah, I do want to just bring awareness to the mental health support that's available to Black women in general. We don't always know resources because we don't talk about them. So I did mention my podcast, She Matters. It is available, and that is a free resource for women, specifically single moms who struggle in their relationships. And the goal, my personal goal with She Matters, is to prevent suicidal ideation and depression in single mothers. There's other resources available online, like Therapy for Black Girls,
Yeah.
which provides a directory for Black therapists, but it also has a podcast and other resources available. I highly recommend that one. There's also the Loveland Foundation. So if you have a Black woman who is in need of therapy but can't afford it, she can go to that website and apply for vouchers. And to my knowledge, I don't think they ask about income. I'm not really sure, but I do know that they provide 4 vouchers at a time that can give, at least supplement the cost for therapy.
Oh, awesome. I am writing these resources because we definitely, man, that's great. And then I've been listening. So I saw your podcast on YouTube, Spotify, and then the Apple iPod. And those are pretty much all the platforms, I think. So your
And
podcast,
Google, I believe, but
you
I
know
don't know if anyone listens to Google
you,
podcasts.
you know what? Maybe. So y'all know where to get it. So definitely go and listen. You just really provide a lot of valuable information. And I think it's important that you do the work that you do because it really saves lives. And
Thank
and
you.
you know. So I just want to say thank you again. I really appreciate you bringing your expertise and really just sharing with us things that we need to know as it pertains to the mental health of Black women. So thank you so much for sharing your expertise and really just educating us and walking us through some of the steps and ways that we can really support the people in our lives, Black women in particular, when they're going through their pregnancies and beyond. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank
Uh,
you for having me.
Absolutely welcome. And we look forward to hearing from you again. So because we'll be listening to your podcast.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.